The house had been standing on that street for more than 3 decades. It wasn't big or fancy, but it carried the weight of a lifetime. Every wall held a memory. Every corner had a story. For Evelyn Harper, that house was not just a place to live. It was the last thing that still felt like home. Evelyn was 68 years old and had lived a quiet life. She wasn't rich. She wasn't powerful. She was the kind of woman people rarely noticed. She woke up early, made simple meals, watered her plants, and kept her curtains open during the day so sunlight could fill the rooms her husband once walked through. Her husband, Thomas, had passed away less than a year earlier. A sudden heart attack took him on an ordinary Tuesday morning. One moment he was reaching for his shoes, and the next, he was gone. No goodbye, no warning, just silence. After the funeral, the house felt too big and too quiet. Evelyn moved slowly from room to room, touching old furniture, straightening things that didn't need fixing. Grief made time feel strange. Some days passed in seconds. Others dragged on forever. Her son Daniel used to visit often when he was younger, but life pulled him away. Marriage, work, responsibilities. He came less and less. When he did come, he was usually in a hurry. His wife Linda almost always stayed in the car or checked her phone the entire time. Evelyn never complained. She believed families should be patient with one another. She believed love meant giving without asking too much in return. When Thomas died, Daniel cried at the funeral. Linda didn't. She wore dark glasses and kept whispering to people she barely knew. Evelyn noticed, but she said nothing. For a while after the funeral, everything was quiet. Too quiet. Then one afternoon, 3 months later, a shiny car pulled up in front of the house. It didn't belong in that neighborhood. The engine purred softly, expensive and confident. Evelyn was in the kitchen peeling potatoes when she heard the knock. It wasn't a polite knock. It was sharp, fast, demanding. She wiped her hands on a towel and walked to the door. When she opened it, Linda stood there with her arms crossed. Her lips were tight and her eyes were cold, in a way Evelyn had never seen before. "Can I come in?" Linda asked, already stepping forward without waiting for an answer. Evelyn moved aside. "Of course," she said softly. Linda walked straight into the living room, looking around as if she were inspecting something she planned to buy. Her heels clicked against the floor, echoing in the quiet space. "You still haven't changed anything," Linda said. Evelyn nodded. "I didn't feel ready." Linda let out a short laugh. "Well, that's not really important anymore." Something about the way she said that made Evelyn's stomach tighten. Linda sat down without being invited and pulled a folder from her bag. She placed it on the table like it carried authority. "We need to talk about the house," she said. Evelyn felt her heart beat faster. "What about it?" Linda opened the folder and slid a few papers across the table. "It's time you started thinking realistically. This house should belong to Daniel and me now." Evelyn stared at the papers but didn't touch them. "Thomas and I bought this house together," she said calmly. "It's in my name." Linda sighed loudly, as if explaining something obvious to a child. "Daniel is your only son. This house will be his one day anyway. There's no reason for you to keep holding on to it." Evelyn felt her throat tighten. "I'm still alive," she said quietly. Linda leaned forward. "Exactly. And that's the problem. You're living here alone. It's a waste. Daniel and I need space. We're thinking of starting a business. This property could help us." Evelyn shook her head slowly. "This is my home." Linda's expression hardened. "You're being selfish." The word hit harder than Evelyn expected. She had spent her whole life caring for others, cooking meals, supporting her husband, raising her son. The idea that she was selfish felt wrong, yet painful. "I'm not refusing to help," Evelyn said. "But I'm not giving up my home." Linda stood up suddenly. "You don't get it," she said. "You don't have many years left. Be practical." Evelyn felt her hands tremble. She placed them together to steady herself. "Please don't talk to me like that." Linda grabbed the papers and waved them in the air. "Do you know how expensive rent is? Do you know how unfair it is that you sit here alone while we struggle?" Evelyn looked at her, confused. Daniel never said he was struggling. Linda's eyes flashed. Because he doesn't want to upset you. But I'm not afraid to be honest. Evelyn took a deep breath. I need time, she said. And I need to talk to a lawyer before signing anything. That was when Linda lost her patience. Her face twisted with anger. A lawyer? She snapped. You don't trust your own family? Evelyn stood her ground. I trust myself. The room went silent. The ticking clock on the wall sounded louder than ever. Linda stepped closer. Too close? You think you have power, she said through clenched teeth. But you don't. Before Evelyn could react, Linda raised her hand. The slap came fast. It echoed through the room, sharp and shocking. Evelyn staggered back, her cheek burning. The world felt unreal for a moment, like she had stepped outside her own body. Her hand slowly rose to her face. Her eyes filled with tears, not just from pain but from disbelief. Linda stood there breathing hard. Maybe that will wake you up, she said. Evelyn didn't scream. She didn't cry out. She simply looked at Linda, her eyes steady, despite the tears. Get out, Evelyn said softly. Linda scoffed. You'll regret this. She turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. Evelyn stood alone in the living room, shaking. The house felt different now. Violated. Heavy. She walked slowly to the window and watched Linda's car drive away. For a long time, Evelyn just stood there. Then she sat down in her old chair, closed her eyes, and let the tears fall. But beneath the pain, something else began to form. A quiet resolve. This house had seen love, loss, and sacrifice. And Evelyn was not about to let it be taken by force. That night, as she turned off the lights and went to bed, she made a choice that would change everything. The next morning, Evelyn woke up before sunrise. Her body ached, not just from the slap, but from the weight of what had happened. She moved slowly, each step careful. The house seemed different now, heavier somehow. As if it had absorbed the tension from the day before, she went to the kitchen and made herself a cup of tea. Steam curled up from the cup, warming her face. She sat by the window, watching the street slowly come alive. The sun was rising, but the light didn't seem to reach inside her yet. She thought about what Linda had said. The words that cut deeper than her hand ever could. The house should belong to Daniel and her. That she was selfish. That she was old. Evelyn had spent her life caring for others. Here she was being treated like a stranger in her own home. She didn't cry this time. She breathed deeply and reminded herself that anger and fear were temporary. They were not her. She had always been patient. She had always been strong. Evelyn's first step was to call someone she trusted. She dialed the number of a lawyer she had met a few years back when she and Thomas were arranging their wills. The lawyer, a gentle voice on the phone, listened carefully as she explained everything. I understand, the lawyer said. Do not sign anything. Not a single paper. We can protect your rights, but you need to stay calm and document everything. Evelyn hung up, feeling slightly lighter. At least someone on the outside understood what she was facing. But she knew it wouldn't be easy. Linda wasn't just someone acting on impulse. She had confidence, ambition, and a sense of entitlement that could make her dangerous. The day passed slowly. Evelyn moved through her house like a shadow, cleaning a little, organizing a little, but mostly just thinking. Every sound outside, the hum of cars, the barking of a neighbor's dog, even the wind rustling the trees felt amplified. She felt watched, not by strangers, but by someone who knew her family. Someone who believed they had a right to control her life. In the afternoon, she heard a knock. Her heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure if she was ready to see Linda again. She approached the door cautiously, but when she opened it, it wasn't Linda. It was her next-door neighbor. A kind, older man who had always been friendly and helpful. I saw what happened yesterday, he said quietly. Are you okay? Evelyn nodded. I'll be fine. Thank you for checking. He looked at her with concern. If you need anything, don't hesitate. And don't let her intimidate you. This is your home. Nobody can take that from you without your agreement. Evelyn felt warmth in her chest. It was good to know she wasn't entirely alone. She thanked him and closed the door, feeling a little stronger. As evening approached, Evelyn realized she needed a plan. She couldn't just wait and hope Linda would change her mind. She needed to understand exactly what her legal rights were, what options she had, and how to protect herself. She went through old documents, old letters from Thomas, and old financial papers. Everything mattered. She found letters where Thomas had talked about how much he loved their home, how he wanted Evelyn to feel safe there, and how important it was that the house remained a place of comfort for her. She also found receipts and statements proving she had paid for the house over the years. Proving her claim even further, it was exhausting. But Evelyn felt a sense of empowerment she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time since Thomas had passed, she felt she was taking control of her own life, not letting fear or aggression dictate it. That night, Evelyn prepared a small meal and ate alone in the quiet dining room. The house was calm, except for the faint creaking of the old floorboards and the occasional wind tapping at the windows. She thought about Daniel. She wondered if he even knew what was happening. He lived far away, and life had distracted him. Would he side with Linda out of convenience, or would he understand the truth? Evelyn decided she couldn't wait for him to act. She had to act first. She had to protect her home and her dignity. She went to bed earlier than usual, her mind racing, but her body tired. Sleep didn't come immediately. She lay there thinking about what Linda had done, what she had said, and what she could do next. The fear of confrontation was still there, but underneath it, a quiet determination began to grow. The following day, Evelyn began making preparations. She called the lawyer again, explaining that she wanted to take legal steps immediately. The lawyer advised her to gather more documents, to write down every interaction with Linda, and to make sure everything was recorded in case the situation escalated. Evelyn started writing a detailed account of the confrontation. She described the knock, the way Linda had entered without permission, the words spoken, and the slap. Writing it down made it feel more real. She realized she wasn't imagining things. What had happened was wrong, and it needed to be addressed. Later that afternoon, she received a call from Daniel. He sounded uneasy, almost hesitant. "Mom," he said, "Linda told me you had an argument yesterday. Is everything okay?" Evelyn took a deep breath. "Daniel, I'm fine, but you need to know the truth. She came here demanding the house, and she even hit me." There was a pause. Evelyn could hear the surprise and disbelief in his voice. "She did what?" "I'm not exaggerating," Evelyn said firmly. "I need you to understand that I am not going to give up my home because someone feels entitled. This is my house. It always has been, and it always will be mine, unless I choose otherwise." Daniel sighed. "I didn't know she was capable of that. I'll talk to her." Evelyn nodded. "I hope so. But don't rush. Take your time, and don't let her intimidate you either." After hanging up, Evelyn felt a little relief. At least Daniel now knew. At least someone on her side could be her voice if she needed it. But she also knew that words alone wouldn't stop Linda. Actions were required. Careful and deliberate actions. The next few days were filled with small but meaningful steps. Evelyn organized her documents, met with her lawyer, and carefully considered every option. She knew confrontation was coming, but she wasn't going to let panic dictate her moves. She was learning patience again, even if it came with tension and uncertainty. One evening, she sat in her living room reading an old photo album. She noticed a pattern. Every time life had thrown challenges her way, she had survived. She had made difficult decisions. She had stood her ground. And she had come out stronger. This realization gave her hope. Linda might have anger and impatience, but Evelyn had history, wisdom, a quiet strength that could not be rushed or bullied. The next morning, Evelyn felt ready. She would not wait for another surprise visit or another slap. She would act, but carefully, ensuring that the house and her peace remained intact. The journey ahead was uncertain, but she knew one thing: she would not back down. She would protect her home, her dignity, and herself, no matter what it took. Evelyn spent the next few days quietly observing her surroundings. The neighborhood was calm, but she couldn't shake the feeling that every rustle, every car passing by, carried the potential for confrontation. Linda's words and actions had left a mark deeper than any physical slap could. It was a mix of anger, fear, and disbelief that someone so close could act so boldly. She kept herself busy, not just with paperwork and legal preparations, but with small acts that reminded her of life's simple pleasures. She tended to her plants, which were thriving more than ever. She baked bread, the smell filling the house and offering comfort she hadn't felt in weeks. She even started sorting old photographs, memories of happier times with Thomas and Daniel, a reminder that love and connection had always been stronger than fear. One afternoon, as she was stacking books on the shelf, there was a knock at the door. Evelyn froze for a moment, unsure whether she wanted to face Linda again so soon. When she opened the door, it wasn't Linda. It was a young woman from 2 houses down. Someone she had seen waving politely on walks, but had never spoken too much. "I heard what happened," the young woman said softly. "I just wanted to check on you." "I'm so sorry she treated you that way." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Thank you. That means a lot." The neighbor glanced around the porch. "If you ever need anything, someone to talk to, or help with errands, I'm here. Don't let anyone make you feel alone." Evelyn felt a warmth in her chest. She realized that while Linda had tried to isolate her, support could be found in unexpected places. It was a small but powerful reminder that the world was not entirely harsh. Inside the house, Evelyn returned to her documents. She had begun preparing a detailed plan with her lawyer. Everything needed to be documented. Every letter, every bill, every interaction with Linda had to be recorded. This wasn't just about the house. It was about respect, boundaries, and the principle that no one could take what was rightfully hers through force or what? Intimidation. She also realized she had to prepare for the psychological side of the conflict. Linda had been aggressive, almost merciless, and Evelyn knew that confronting someone like that could take a toll on her mental state if she wasn't careful. She decided to set boundaries. She would remain polite but firm. She would not engage in arguments that served no purpose. She would act strategically. In the evenings, Evelyn often sat by the window, looking out at the street. She remembered conversations with Thomas about strength and patience, about facing life's challenges with dignity. Those lessons, once theoretical, now felt like a lifeline. Evelyn reminded herself that she was not weak. She was capable, wise, and prepared to protect what mattered. A few days later, there was another knock. This time, Evelyn was ready. She opened the door to find Linda standing there, looking more determined than before. Her posture was confident, almost aggressive, and she carried a small stack of papers in her hand. "Mom," Linda said, using the word in a sharp tone, "I've come to make this easier for you. Sign these papers, and we can resolve everything quickly." Evelyn stepped back slightly. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind, but the reality of Linda's presence still carried tension. "I've already spoken to my lawyer," Evelyn said calmly. "I will not sign anything until everything has been properly reviewed." Linda's eyes narrowed. "You're making this so difficult. You don't realize what you're risking. You could lose Daniel's trust, and we could lose a lot of money. You need to think practically." "I am thinking practically," Evelyn replied steadily. "I am thinking about what is right, not just convenient." Linda's expression flickered for a moment. Evelyn thought she might leave, but instead Linda stepped closer, her voice lowering. "You've always been stubborn. Thomas should have made sure you understood how the world works." Evelyn held her ground, though her heart raced. She could feel anger rising, but she controlled it, knowing that reacting impulsively could give Linda the upper hand. "Thomas loved this home," she said softly. "He wanted me to feel safe here. That's what matters to me now." Linda's lips pressed together. She paused, as if measuring her next words carefully. "You don't understand," she said finally. "This isn't personal. It's business." Evelyn shook her head. "When you hit me yesterday, that was personal, and that cannot be ignored." Linda flinched slightly, but she didn't leave. Evelyn realized that standing firm was having an effect. The confidence she had built over days of preparation, reflection, small victories was beginning to show. "You really think you can win against me?" Linda asked, her tone sharper now. "I am not trying to win against you," Evelyn said calmly. I am protecting what is mine. That's all. The silence that followed was tense. Finally, Linda shoved the papers toward Evelyn and stormed out, slamming the door. Evelyn took a deep breath, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. She had survived the encounter, but she knew it wasn't the end. Linda would return, try new tactics, and possibly escalate further. That night, Evelyn sat down with her notebook and wrote everything that had happened, every detail of the confrontation, every word spoken. Writing it down gave her clarity. It transformed fear into strategy. She realized that every action she took now mattered, not just for herself, but for the principle she stood for. Over the next week, Evelyn prepared even more meticulously. She contacted a few more neighbors quietly, explaining that she might need witnesses if things escalated. She organized all her legal documents into neat folders, each labeled carefully. She even rehearsed conversations in her mind, imagining herself calm, firm, and unshakable. Meanwhile, she noticed small but encouraging signs. Some neighbors, who had seemed distant before, began stopping by more often, offering help with groceries or just friendly conversation. It was a reminder that community, though subtle, could be a powerful support. Then one morning, Evelyn received an unexpected call from Daniel. His voice was hesitant but determined. "Mom, I've been talking to Linda. I think we need to meet, all three of us, and discuss this calmly." Evelyn agreed. She felt cautious hope. Perhaps dialogue, combined with her preparedness, could bring some clarity. She reminded herself to stay calm, to stick to facts, and to maintain her dignity no matter what happened. When the day of the meeting arrived, Evelyn dressed neatly, her posture straight, her voice ready. She carried with her all the evidence, documents, and notes she had compiled. She knew this was not just about a piece of paper or a house. It was about respect, fairness, and standing up for herself without losing control. Daniel arrived first. He looked worried, but relieved to see her prepared. Linda followed, her expression a mixture of confidence and impatience. Evelyn felt the tension in the room, but she reminded herself to breathe, to observe, and to speak when necessary. The conversation started tensely. Linda tried to assert dominance, but Evelyn remained calm, presenting facts, documents, and her reasoning clearly. She spoke about her rights, her responsibilities, and her intention to protect what was rightfully hers. She was firm but respectful, allowing her words to carry authority without aggression. At first, Linda resisted, arguing with every point, but Evelyn's calm confidence began to affect the dynamic. Daniel looked between them, visibly trying to mediate, but clearly influenced by his mother's composed stance. By the end of the meeting, Evelyn had not only defended her home, but also gained Daniel's clear understanding and support. Linda left the room, still frustrated, but she no longer carried the same confidence she had initially. Evelyn realized that standing firm, documenting everything, and relying on logic and patience had shifted the balance. That night, Evelyn sat by the window, looking at her house bathed in the soft glow of the moon. She felt a sense of relief and quiet pride. She had faced aggression, intimidation, and fear, and she had not flinched. She had protected her home, her dignity, and her peace. And in that quiet, she realized that true strength wasn't loud or flashy, it was steady, patient, and unyielding. The days following the meeting were strange for Evelyn. The house felt the same, yet different. There was a tension that lingered in the corners, a quiet reminder that the battle was not over. Linda had not returned, but Evelyn knew her absence didn't mean defeat. It only meant that her opponent was considering her next move. Evelyn continued her daily routines. But now, she did so with heightened awareness. She noticed the small things, the creak of the door hinges, the shadows in the corners, the rustling of leaves outside that sounded louder than usual. Each sound reminded her to stay vigilant, but it also reminded her of the life she had built here. This house was not just walls and furniture. It was the history of her family, of her love, and of years spent building a home that was hers, in every sense that mattered. She spent mornings reviewing documents, making sure that every detail was in order. Receipts, bank statements, property deeds, and correspondence all organized meticulously. Evelyn had learned that preparation was not just a safety measure, but also a way to calm her mind. Each paper she filed, each note she wrote, was a step toward reclaiming a sense of control over her life. Afternoons were spent in small acts of comfort. She watered her plants, baked bread, and tended to her garden. The familiar routines grounded her, keeping the fear and tension from consuming her completely, even when she felt anxious about what Linda might do next. She reminded herself that she had faced challenges before and emerged stronger. One day there was a knock at the door. Evelyn froze, her heart skipping a beat. She had expected it to be Linda, but when she opened the door, it was a young man from a local delivery service with a package. "Signature required," he said, holding out a clipboard. Evelyn signed quickly and took the package inside. It was from her lawyer, containing additional documents and information about her rights, as well as advice on how to handle further confrontations. She read through it carefully, feeling a sense of reassurance. She was not alone in this, and she had every right to protect her home. Later that evening, there was another knock. This time, Evelyn knew it was Linda. She took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay calm. When she opened the door, Linda was holding more papers and had a determined look on her face. "Mom," Linda said, her voice sharp, "I've been thinking. We need to find a solution that works for everyone. Let's talk." Evelyn stepped aside, letting Linda in. She had prepared for this moment mentally. She would remain calm, polite, and firm. She would not let anger or fear dictate her actions. They sat in the living room, the tension thick between them. Linda started by presenting her points, arguing that the house would be better managed if it were in her and Daniel's name. She spoke of plans, finances, and practicality. But Evelyn listened carefully, noting every detail. When it was her turn to speak, Evelyn remained calm. She presented her documents, her notes, and her reasoning clearly. She spoke about her legal rights, her emotional connection to the house, and her intention to remain there. Her voice was steady, her demeanor composed. She did not raise her voice, and she did not attack. She simply spoke the truth. Linda's expression shifted. At first it was frustration, but then there was hesitation. Evelyn could see the realization forming that this was not a battle she could easily win through force or intimidation. "I understand your points," Linda said finally, her tone less aggressive. "But this still doesn't feel fair." Evelyn nodded. "I understand that you feel that way. But fairness is not about getting what you want by threatening or harming others. It's about respecting what belongs to each person and acting with integrity." Linda looked at her, eyes narrowing, then softened slightly. Evelyn realized that by remaining calm and presenting facts, she had shifted the dynamic. Linda could no longer rely on aggression. She had to consider reason. The meeting ended with no immediate resolution, but Evelyn felt a sense of accomplishment. She had faced Linda's determination, stood her ground, and emerged unshaken. She had not lost her composure, and she had made it clear that her home and her rights were not negotiable through threats or intimidation. That night, Evelyn reflected on the events. She realized that the confrontation had strengthened her resolve. She had faced fear, aggression, and uncertainty, yet she had not been defeated. She had acted with dignity. That was something no one could take away from her. Over the following weeks, Evelyn continued to prepare. She maintained her routines, strengthened her support network, and stayed in close contact with her lawyer. She also began to notice subtle changes in the neighborhood. Neighbors who had been quiet before started offering small gestures of support, checking in, offering help, or simply acknowledging her presence. It was a reminder that she was not alone. That community could be a source of strength. Then, one afternoon, Evelyn received a call from Daniel. His voice was steady, more confident than before. "Mom, I've spoken with Linda. I think we need to take this to a formal setting, maybe mediation, to ensure everything is clear and fair." Evelyn agreed. She knew that formal steps were necessary, and she had prepared for this. She gathered all her documents, notes, and evidence, feeling a quiet confidence. She had done everything she could to protect her home. and now it was time to ensure that the process was recognized legally. The mediation session was tense, but productive. Evelyn presented her case clearly and calmly. She shared her documents, her notes, and her reasoning. Linda presented hers, but it was evident that the aggression and intimidation tactics were no longer effective. Evelyn's calm, steady approach, combined with thorough preparation, had shifted the balance. By the end of the session, a resolution was reached. Evelyn would remain in her home, with full legal rights intact. Linda would no longer attempt to pressure or intimidate her. The agreement was formalized, documented, and witnessed, ensuring that there would be no future disputes. Evelyn felt a profound sense of relief. The house was hers, as it had always been. She had protected her home, her dignity, and her peace. The journey had been difficult, filled with tension, fear, and uncertainty, but she had emerged stronger that evening. She walked through the house, touching the walls, looking at the familiar corners and feeling the history of her life within them. She realized that the true victory was not just in retaining the house, but in standing up for herself, facing fear with courage, and acting with integrity. Evelyn knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but she also knew that she had the strength, patience, and wisdom to face them. She had learned that true power was not in aggression or intimidation, but in calm, steady determination, preparation, and the courage to stand up for what was right. And in that knowledge, she found peace. The morning of the final meeting arrived quietly. With a gentle light spilling into Evelyn's bedroom, she woke earlier than usual, not from anxiety, but from a sense of readiness. The days of tension, fear, and preparation had led to this moment, and she felt a calm clarity she had not known in weeks. Today, everything would be resolved. It would be done on her terms. Evelyn dressed carefully, choosing clothes that made her feel both comfortable and confident. She had learned that presentation mattered not for others, but for herself. Each step she took through the house was measured, steady. She moved through the familiar rooms, touching the walls, the furniture, the pictures of memories that had been a source of comfort and strength throughout. This ordeal, the drive to the mediation center, was quiet. Daniel sat beside her, offering reassuring words, but also silently supporting her decisions. Evelyn appreciated his presence, knowing that he had seen the entire journey and understood the depth of what had occurred. Linda, as expected, was there as well, arriving in a confident manner, carrying her stack of papers like armor. The room was neutral, formal, but tense. Each of them took a seat, and the mediator began with introductions and explanations of the process. Evelyn felt her heart rate slow as she focused on breathing steadily. She had prepared for every possible question, every objection, and every angle Linda could take. Preparation had been her shield and her anchor. Linda started with her arguments, presenting financial reasons, plans for the house, and claims that she believed justified her demands. Evelyn listened, not interrupting, but noting inconsistencies and points where emotion, rather than fact, drove the statements. When Linda's turn ended, Evelyn spoke. Her voice was calm, soft, yet firm. She laid out the history of the house, the shared life she had built there with Thomas, and her legal rights. She presented documents carefully, explaining each in simple terms that were easy for anyone to understand. She did not raise her voice, did not make threats, and did not attack. She spoke only the truth, clearly and with purpose. Daniel watched intently, clearly impressed by the composure and clarity of his mother. Even the mediator seemed attentive, taking careful notes and asking clarifying questions. Evelyn realized that her calm, prepared approach was not only protecting her legally, but also morally. She had shown that strength could be quiet and steady. "It's not loud or aggressive," Linda responded, but her confidence was faltering. She tried to assert dominance. But Evelyn's prepared responses and clear evidence made it impossible for her to intimidate or manipulate. It became evident that the aggression that had worked in a personal setting did not hold in a formal, structured environment. Evelyn had turned the tables not through anger, but through careful preparation, patience, and dignity. The discussion continued with questions, clarifications, and some emotional moments. Evelyn stayed composed, acknowledging Linda's points without conceding any rights. She explained that the house was not just a property, but a part of her life and memories. The mediator nodded, understanding that legal rights and personal stakes often intertwined. By mid-afternoon, a resolution began to form. Linda's confidence diminished as she realized that further confrontation would only damage her credibility. Evelyn remained calm, patient, and firm, showing that persistence without aggression could yield results. Daniel, clearly relieved, offered suggestions to maintain peace, emphasizing the importance of family relationships over conflict. Finally, the mediator proposed an agreement. Evelyn would retain full rights to the house. Linda and Daniel would have access only in ways mutually agreed upon. All future interactions regarding the property would be conducted formally. Legal documents were drawn, reviewed, and signed. Evelyn's rights were secured, and the agreement was binding. Leaving no room for future disputes, the sense of relief was profound. Evelyn felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had not only preserved her home, but also her dignity. She had faced fear, aggression, and intimidation. And she had emerged victorious not through confrontation, but through preparation, calm, and integrity, driving home. Evelyn felt the quiet pride of someone who had stood firm in the face of adversity. The streets she passed seemed familiar yet different, as if acknowledging her resilience. She realized that the house she had feared losing was still hers, but more importantly, her sense of self and her confidence had been reinforced. Once home, Evelyn walked through each room, touching the walls and furniture. Every corner held memories of love, grief, and daily life. The house was more than a structure. It was a repository of her life story, and she had protected it. She felt the presence of Thomas in the memories they shared and a renewed sense of purpose in the life she continued to live. That evening, Daniel visited her, bringing flowers and a simple homemade cake. They sat together, talking quietly, sharing memories, and planning small, joyful activities. Linda did not come, but her absence no longer mattered. The storm had passed, and peace was restored as night fell. Evelyn sat by the window, looking out at the quiet street bathed in soft moonlight. She reflected on the journey, the fear, the confrontation, the preparation, and finally, the resolution. She realized that true strength was not measured by how loudly one could assert dominance, but by how steadily one could stand in truth, clarity, and integrity. She knew life would continue to bring challenges, unexpected moments, and difficult decisions. But she also knew that she had learned a vital lesson. Preparation, patience, and self-respect were powerful tools. The house was hers, yes. But the greater victory was the knowledge that she could face adversity without losing herself in the quiet of the night. Evelyn allowed herself a rare smile. The home she loved, the life she had built, and the peace she had fought for were all secure. The ending had been unexpected, not a dramatic confrontation or a public spectacle, but a quiet, steady triumph that honored her life, her rights, and her dignity. She closed her eyes, feeling a profound sense of contentment, knowing that she had not only won her house back, but she had also reclaimed her sense of strength, self-worth. Weeks passed since the resolution with Linda and the formal agreement regarding the house. Life began to settle into a new rhythm for Evelyn. But unlike before, there was a sense of peace that came with the victory. She no longer walked cautiously through her home, no longer flinched at unexpected knocks. The air felt lighter, as if the walls themselves had exhaled alongside her. The mornings were bright, filled with sunlight spilling through the curtains, casting familiar patterns on the floors. Evelyn continued her routines with renewed energy. She brewed her tea, watered her plants, and moved through each room with a sense of purpose. Each act, no matter how small, reminded her that the house was hers, and that she had earned this stability not by force, but through patience, preparation, and quiet courage. Her garden had started to flourish, the flowers blooming in vibrant colors, and the vegetables thriving under her care. The work of tending to her home and garden became therapeutic. It reminded her that nurturing and patience were not only tools for growing plants, but also for building and sustaining her own life. Each bloom was a silent affirmation that despite challenges, life could still be beautiful. Daniel visited often, bringing small things from town and sharing news from his life. He no longer appeared stressed or conflicted. Evelyn noticed the relief in his demeanor, as if he too had felt the tension of the past weeks and now could breathe again. Their conversations were simple, warm, and filled with genuine connection. They spoke of memories, of small dreams, and of the future. Evelyn realized that these moments were more precious than any argument, any confrontation, or any piece of property. One afternoon, while Evelyn was tending her garden, the neighbor who had been quietly supportive approached her with a basket of fresh fruits. "I thought you might enjoy these," he said with a gentle smile. Evelyn accepted them gratefully, feeling the warmth of community. It was remarkable how small gestures of kindness could mend the invisible cracks left by conflict. She realized that support did not always come from dramatic actions or loud declarations. It often came quietly, steadily, and sincerely as the weeks continued. Evelyn noticed that the neighborhood seemed to respond to her differently. People greeted her warmly, paused to chat, and occasionally offered help with small tasks. It was not because she had won a legal battle, but because she had shown resilience and strength. They recognized in her a person who stood firm with dignity and who carried herself with quiet confidence. Evelyn felt a renewed sense of belonging, not only in her home but in the community. One evening, Evelyn sat in her living room, looking at the old photographs that filled her shelves. Each picture told a story: her wedding day with Thomas, vacations they had taken together, Daniel as a small boy learning to ride his bike, birthdays, holidays, and everyday moments of love. These were the true treasures of her life, far more valuable than the walls and roof that sheltered her. She realized that the confrontation with Linda, difficult as it had been, had reminded her of what really mattered. Home was not just a place. It was the memories, the love, and the life that one cultivated within it. The tranquility of the evenings became a canvas for reflection. Evelyn often sat by the window, watching the sky change colors as the sun set, thinking about life, challenges, and the unexpected twists that had led her here. She thought about Linda and wondered about her motivations, realizing that everyone has struggles and insecurities, and sometimes they manifest as aggression or entitlement. Evelyn felt no anger now, only understanding that each person's actions are often a reflection of their own fears and desires. One morning, Evelyn decided to engage more actively with her community. She began volunteering at the local library and occasionally at a small community center. She read to children, helped organize events, and offered guidance to anyone who sought it. These activities brought her joy and a renewed sense of purpose. She discovered that helping others was another way to reclaim strength and confidence. And it reminded her that life's meaning extended. Beyond personal struggles or disputes, Daniel noticed the changes in his mother and expressed admiration. "You've grown so much through this," he said one afternoon while they were having tea on the porch. "I've never seen you so calm and confident. You've turned a really difficult time into something positive." Evelyn smiled, feeling the satisfaction of personal growth. "Life has a way of teaching lessons, sometimes harshly," she replied. "But the key is to learn from them, not be consumed by them." Months passed, and the events with Linda became a distant memory, no longer a source of anxiety, but a story of triumph. Evelyn found herself more attentive to the simple pleasures of life's morning sunlight. The scent of flowers, the laughter of children in the neighborhood, the warmth of a shared conversation. Each day was a reminder that resilience and dignity could create peace, even after conflict. One particularly quiet afternoon, Evelyn received a letter in the mail. It was from a distant relative, someone she hadn't spoken to in years, expressing concern after hearing about the recent difficulties. The letter was kind, thoughtful, and filled with offers of support. Evelyn felt touched by the gesture. It reinforced her belief that life often brings unexpected kindness when one remains steadfast and true to oneself. Evelyn also began to reflect on her personal growth. The experience with Linda had taught her lessons that were far deeper than legal rights or property ownership. She had learned the importance of preparation, the value of calm persistence, and the strength that comes from standing firmly in one's truth. She realized that these qualities would guide her in every challenge ahead, whether small or large. Her days continued to pass in quiet productivity and reflection. She wrote letters to friends, keeping connections alive and strong. She explored hobbies she had long set aside: painting, gardening, and even small woodworking projects. Each activity reminded her that life could be fulfilling and beautiful when approached with intention and care. In the evenings, she often sat with Daniel or neighbors, sharing stories, laughter, and simple meals. These moments became the heart of her life, richer and more meaningful than any confrontation or conflict could have provided. Evelyn understood that the true measure of a home was not in its legal documents but in the warmth, love, and connection it nurtured. One night, as the moonlight filled the living room, Evelyn sat quietly, feeling a profound sense of contentment. She thought about the challenges she had faced, the fear, the uncertainty, and the confrontation with Linda. She realized that the struggle had shaped her into a more confident, patient, and wise person. It had taught her that life's battles are not always won through force, but through integrity, preparation, and calm perseverance. Evelyn's reflection was interrupted by a soft knock at the door. She opened it to find a group of neighborhood children, smiling shyly and carrying a small bouquet of flowers they had picked from a nearby park. "For you," one of them said softly. Evelyn accepted the flowers with warmth, feeling the simple joy of human connection. It was a reminder that life, even after difficulty, held moments of unexpected beauty. That night, Evelyn sat by her window, gazing at the stars. The house, the garden, the memories, and the community were all hers in a way that went beyond ownership. They were hers because she had nurtured them, protected them, and allowed them to flourish. The struggle with Linda, once a source of tension, was now a chapter in a larger story of resilience, growth, and life's quiet triumphs. Evelyn understood that the journey of life would continue, bringing new challenges, joys, and lessons, but she felt ready. She had learned that strength is quiet, resilience is patient, and dignity is unshakable when rooted in truth and preparation. As she closed her eyes, the soft night air drifting through the open window, she felt a deep sense of peace. Her home, her life, and her spirit were secure, not because of victory over another, but because of the strength she had found within herself. She drifted into sleep with a heart full of gratitude, knowing that the best chapters of her life were still ahead, written with courage, calm, and quiet joy.